Hey, everybody. Welcome to Truth Teller Tales. I'm Ellen, and I'm dedicated to interviewing those truth seekers who are also truth tellers. And they all seem to have this unwavering faith during this most incredible time in history. And I do feel like their stories will be told and studied for many years to come. So it's just an exciting time to be doing this. Today, I'm thrilled to be talking to a patriot who just seems like a good guy, and he is a generous soul behind the scenes. And once he kind of collaborated with Paul, Sapioplex, who I just interviewed, the things that they spoke of on different podcasts was a mind bend for me, and I'm sure many people. And I'm just fascinated to hear more about his story and who he is, and just to say hi and hear everything about him. So John, hi.
Hey, how are you?
How are I'm great. How are you?
I am good. Sun is shining. It's a good day.
Yes, it is. So you're known as JFAnon, and
Mhm.
I first saw you on a Rambo and Friends. I think you and Paul.
Yeah.
And I just want people to know kind of where you are now. How did that start? And then um do you feel like your presence on X really got you um noticed first, or your partnership with Paul and the theories you came up with together? I mean, where kind of are you right now?
I've never really thought of it that way. Paul and I got connected because we were both on Beer's Friday Night Zoom, Scott. And
Right.
I mean, when I look back at the path that brought me to wherever this is, um, I, I don't. I mean, it just it's crazy. Just the way that some of these small connections turned into something that is, obviously a chunk of my life now. Um,
Yeah.
so I originally went to Threadfest, the first one in Nashville, and I think it was March of 2023. I think, and I got there. I mainly went to see two friends who I knew were going to be there. I didn't know Scott at all. Matter of
Mhm.
fact, I'd never seen Liberty Den, so I had no idea. And I get in the elevator to go up to my room after checking in, and Scott's in the elevator. And Scott, I mean, he's just one of the friendliest guys ever. Um,
Yeah.
like his superpower, by the way, he's a super connector. He puts people together.
Yes.
Um, but we rode the elevator up together, and he introduced himself, and I gave him my name, and we just kind of started talking a little bit, and
Hmm.
then I didn't talk to him probably at all during that weekend, but he made sure to find me on Sunday. He said, "Hey, here's my cell phone." I gave him mine. And by the end of the first week after Threadfest, he'd invited me to these Friday night Zooms. So I go into this Friday night Zoom and I see all these personalities. I'm like, man, I know all these guys on X. I've seen them. Wow, these
Yeah.
guys are like out front, bigger personalities. And I was like, wow, I'm happy to be here. I'm just flattered. And so eventually, Paul gets into there through another friend of ours who was on the call, on the Friday night
Hmm.
call. Paul was invited in, and Paul and I just started on the calls. We started kind of talking, and then we took it offline, and we were talking about deeper stuff, and that was kind of how we first connected. And yeah, it's been he's one of my absolute best friends on this planet.
Yeah, he said the same about you. And so when was that first time you were on? Was it the first time you guys were on something together, Rambo and Friends? And how did
No,
that start?
it was Defender of the Republic, Kaidi.
Oh,
So Kaidi had been on Scott's Friday Night Zooms, and Paul and I had started. I want to say it was like January, February of 2024. Maybe I got the dates all wrong. Man, I think it's been longer than that. 2023 was when Paul and I started talking, early, like spring. And by the midsummer or whatever, he and I had just started digging on other things. And we originally, our first thought was, or the first thing we really kind of dug on, aside from I Pet Goat too. And I don't know if he's ever talked about that with you, but we started talking about the Q drops, and he'd been following Q since the first drop in October of 2017. I found Q in April or May, maybe it was March of 2018. Um, and separately, I mean, I probably spent between then and now, I don't know. I don't know how many thousands of hours. I know Paul has got more than that. Um, but I, I had followed the Q stuff. I was researching, I was digging, I was doing all this stuff. And when Paul and I were talking one time, I said something to him, or maybe he said it to me. I was like, it doesn't seem logical that the Q operation as we believe it to be started on October 28th of 2017.
Yeah.
Q always said, by the book, according to the law and all this stuff. Well, if that were true, then which president authorized Q? I don't think it could have been Trump, because Trump was just in office for 9 months before the first Q drop. How could they have planned a worldwide sting, a worldwide corruption trap that, as extensive as we're led to believe it is, in 9 months? I don't think it's possible. So we both started talking. You know what? What if it does go back? Then which POTUS would have authorized it? Anyway, we came up with our first theory. We called it the Pershevelt theory. Teddy Roosevelt and General John Pershing, and that's on Sapioplex's Substack. That whole
Mm-hmm.
We presented that originally on the Friday night call, and we had people on the call like, no, I don't know about that. I'm not so sure. And we're like, okay, that's cool. We don't need to talk about it anymore with you guys. We're going to keep digging. And
Yeah.
then Kaidi had called us and said, hey, I'd love to have you guys on my show. And so that's what we did. We did 6 different episodes with her, 2 of them on Pershevelt. Uh, and then in the meantime, we started looking at popular music and going, my God, the messaging is everywhere. And it all leans the same way. So it started with Kaidi. Sorry, that was a really long way of
No,
that.
that's it's interesting because, obviously people find you one way or another, and then that, I guess, that led to other people with Rambo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you, and it's just so interesting because I think I even watched the first time you guys were on, and it was emphasized, control your mind, control your and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, because I've only heard one or two other people kind of go in that direction, but I thought, okay, and but it's funny how your mind, that Overton window, can move, because every time you guys are on, I'm more on board. It's just
We'll
so
get you.
interesting.
Well, what's funny is I think we had done 5 or 6 shows with Kaidi, and Kaidi had gotten a phone call from Rambo saying, hey, I want to have these guys on my show. And I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is, but sure, why not? And the thing I would want your audience to remember is, neither Paul nor I ever set out to be personalities. We didn't set out to be on the screen. So
Yeah.
what you see is what you get. For us, I don't care about well, I care about followers. I mean, I care about the people individually, but I
Right.
don't care about a following. I don't care about a
Yes.
personality. I don't need money. I'm not chasing this
Right.
for dollars.
Yeah.
This is kind of a fun way to exercise my mind, and so
Right.
that's and find meaning. So.
Absolutely. Because I know both you and Paul are businessmen,
Mhm.
and so I do think, I'm sure, intellectually, also, just to have a bigger, have somebody you can have a bigger theories with and share things, and of your studies of things. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, I don't think any of that is random. When things like that, when you happen, you've got a friend like that matches up with you.
No, I don't think it's random either. Looking at how, at Paul's background and my background, like he came from tech, and I own a manufacturing company, and I'll tell you what, we're a really basic manufacturing company. But but our backgrounds, our educational backgrounds, even though they were somewhat different, we both had read extensively a lot of the classics, some of the out there stuff, um, and we both had consumed a lot of pop culture just through osmosis. And
Hmm.
so, that's where a lot of our stuff ends up. We see these little threads, like for example, the Egyptian stuff that kind of started to crop up in our research, like looking at ancient Egypt and looking at the gods and the Ogdoad, and then obviously there's Kek, the god Kek, and then if you look
Hmm.
at the all the Anons with the frog and the Kek and all of that,
Hmm.
so we started, you know, separately. Then even we each read the Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. We started reading old texts, the Epic of Atrahasis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and looking at all of these sources. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off track. It's there's just
No,
so much trying to
but
explain.
that,
Well,
but,
how
but
did we arrive?
your point is well taken, because the point is that you all have gone through a lot of information and a lot of
Yeah,
study and a lot of digging into, and that's what I understood and reiterated talking to both of you, is that this isn't just you two guys yakking at the bar just coming up with stuff. You guys were really, you've been diving deep into literature and pop culture, to your point, movies and all of that, to come up with this. And as talked to Paul about, the, the more you both have studied and spoke to each other, your theories have kind of evolved a little
yeah,
bit, right?
yeah, for sure, for sure. From our original Percival theory, now we're 6,000 years back from that. And we came upon our theory of what we call zoids, which is our own little made up term coming from the word trapezoid. Um, but that part of the theory hasn't changed in 18, 19, 20 months now. And we keep trying. We keep trying to break it. We keep trying to find other ways to disprove it. And we're just not seeing it.
Hmm.
Haven't seen anything, and we're totally willing to be wrong. And I think, by the way, that might be the one of the key things that we share, is that we're not afraid to be wrong,
Hmm.
and we are not we do whatever we can to not allow emotion into our rational analysis or critical thinking. So I use this example when we started talking about, okay, well, how far back does Q go? And we were talking about, well, Obama. Wow, I really hate. Okay, I hate the guy, but let's see. And what about Bill Clinton? Well, we think it was before that. Well, does that mean that Bill might be an actor or might be a good guy in this whole thing? Maybe, and maybe Hillary too. The first time that Paul called me and said, "Dude, what if Hillary Clinton is good?" I'm like, no, I want to hate her so much. And it took me about a day. I screw around with that time frame all the time. It's usually it was about a day, and I
Yeah.
started really thinking, going, you know what? If I'm going to critically think about that and consider that, I have to let go of my love to hate her, and
Yes.
say, well, okay, what could really be going on here?
Right.
And so it's that shedding the emotional stuff, which gets in the way of critical thinking.
Absolutely. And I think once you've learned and understood that we probably have been lied to about just about everything,
Yep.
then you can tend to open your mind to maybe other possibilities,
Yep.
understanding that we've been lied to about just about everything,
Yes.
you know? So I want to continue talking about that. But first, I want to go back and I want to, just hear your life story, and just where you were born and your family life and as a kid and stuff like that.
I had a really normal life. Look at me now. How did this happen? Um,
Yeah.
no, I had a normal life. I was adopted, but I
Oh,
was adopted like my parents knew before I was born. They were going to pick me up from the hospital on this day or whatever it was. Um, so I was adopted. I always knew I was adopted. Um,
and what
my
part of the country was this?
I was born in Salt Lake City. My
Okay.
my dad was working for an accounting firm in Salt Lake.
Hmm.
So yeah, I grew up, but my dad and mom both originally from Minnesota, so we moved from Salt Lake to Sioux City, Iowa, for a couple of years, and then by the time I was 5, I was in a town in southern Minnesota, medium-sized town, and that's where I grew up.
And so, do you have any siblings?
I have a younger sibling. My sister is 4 years younger, and yeah, we're not cut from the same cloth.
Is she also adopted?
She is.
And so, and because I haven't talked to many people who are adopted, but because you knew all along, um,
Mhm.
was it just normal and just
Yeah.
accepted? And were you, it wasn't a big deal ever?
No, never really has been. It was never like this. Oh, my birth mother didn't want me or anything like that. There was never any of that. It was just as a matter of fact, like
Mm-hmm.
not unusual to be adopted. I certainly didn't look at it that way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but my mom had been an RN. She was a nurse, and when I was born, she stayed home. So,
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing about my dad. My dad was in a wheelchair. I never saw him walk. He was injured when he was 20 years old.
Wow.
Um, he's a C5 C4 5 for anybody who knows spinal injuries. So he was a quad. Had limited use of his arms. Couldn't use his legs. Obviously didn't work. Um, but yeah, I never saw him walk. But it was never unusual to me. Matter of fact, when I was dating my wife, she never met my dad or my parents, and we went to a Twins game, Minnesota Twins game. My dad loved baseball, um, and I went, yeah, let's go meet my dad. My dad had tickets in another part of the stadium, so we went over there, and I introduced her to my dad, and we walked away after the whatever, and she looked at me and she goes, "You never told me your dad was in a wheelchair." I'm like, "Huh." Yeah, I never thought about it. It was just
I
it was
love
just normal.
Wow. And so so it was just a normal part. And so there was never a time where you guys couldn't do things because he was in a wheelchair, or did he obviously, if it was a normal thing, he didn't feel come across as a victim in any way? I mean,
No,
how was that
no.
as your dad?
My dad, how would I just? My dad was very well. I mean, he was a very successful guy. So when he was injured, he was 20, right? And so he was told he was never going to walk again. Probably spend the rest of his life in a bed. And this is 1960 when he was injured. So quad care and quad lifespan was not good, just because of
Hmm.
the stress that it puts on different organs and things. And he was told that he'd be lucky to live another 10 years. I mean, this is the state of medicine in the 60s. So I was born in 1970. Anyway, my dad lived at Rochester St. Mary's Hospital for 3 years following the accident. And so he had, therapy and all that kind of stuff. But he had to reteach himself how to write, how to be dexterous with his hands. He went back to college, got his accounting degree in 2 years, graduated very close to the top of his class, yet nobody would hire him because the big 8 accounting firms at that time, they required travel. And you're a guy in a folding wheelchair. How are you going to get anywhere? And
Right.
so he ended up hanging out a shingle. He was a CPA for I think 3 or 4 years and got a job offer in Salt Lake in like 1968 to go work for, I don't know if it was Ernst and Young or whatever the predecessor for that was. Um, but he was working there, and the goal was always to get back to Minnesota. So uh,
Hmm.
yeah, he eventually found his way back, and came back, and then with a friend, they bought a small company and turned it into a really big company. So
Wow.
yeah,
That that is, I mean, what a life lesson, and what a person to look up to.
he never complained. I mean, that's the one thing that I mean, I never like it didn't even seem unusual to me. And then I had friends of mine go, "Did your dad ever talk about what it would be like if he could walk?" I'm like, No, he's always said, well, I know one day I'm going to walk again, and never did. So yeah,
Wow.
he was very successful. When I was a teenager, the number of times that he told me, he would say stuff that, I'd complain, and he'd say, John, once I saw a man with no shoes, or I was sad because I had no shoes, and then I saw a man with no feet, and I heard that, I don't know, if I had $1 for every time, I might have $100,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yes.
but his positivity was always there, and I lost both of my parents in 2003. Um, what I'm talking about is a funeral, though. When I had people come up to me that I didn't know, and they said, "Your dad was such a mentor to me," and there were so many people like that. Like, yeah, he would take time out of his day to talk to me, or whenever somebody needed help. So yeah, that's the guy I grew up with. Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
and that's interesting that you would hear those stories, and I want to touch base on that later. But of course, you were a young boy, and you were had your life and busy, and so didn't know the effect he had on people,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
As a kid. So then, as a kid, there, what, who kind of did you hang out with? What group were you an athlete? Were you? I mean, who through middle
I
school and high
was
school?
I was kind of a free agent. Let's call it that, because I had I'm an extrovert, and I had friends that were in every single clique that we had in high school, from the athletes and the jocks and all of that, to the smart kids taking advanced math, because that's what I was. I was in an accelerated program. Um, but and also the guys that cut class and went to smoke cigarettes behind the school. They're, they're all
Oh,
still friends of mine to this day from my high school class. And if any of you guys see this, yeah, and now you know.
wow. That is super cool. So obviously it was a tighter community there if you're, still friends with them. Um,
Yeah, we had
After high school.
250 people in high school class, public high
Oh,
school. There were two
mhm.
public high schools and a Catholic high school, and my dad got kicked out of the Catholic high school when he was 17. Not for bad behavior, but because they said he couldn't work. You can't hold a job and have a good academic record here. So they said you can't work, and he said "f you," and he went to the public high school. So yeah,
Wow.
so Catholic school
God,
was not
that's
an option for me, thank God.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So after sounds like you had a good high school, good friends and things. So
Mhm.
after high school, what did you think you were supposed to do, or what did you do, or what was your path after that?
When I graduated, I wasn't sure. In my mind, I was very interested I had taken advanced chem, a lot of chem and a lot of physics, and uh, we didn't have we had biology, but we didn't have advanced stuff. Um, so I was interested in medicine, but I was also interested in possibly a legal career, because I was on the debate team. I loved debate,
Mm.
loved to read, had no problem speaking in public. And so, I just really didn't know what I wanted to do. And
Mhm.
so I went to Notre Dame. I started out freshman year of studies. Everybody takes the same sort of general classes.
Yes.
But I think I declared myself pre-law, just because what else are you going to do? I didn't know what major I was going to be. And and then I took advanced chem, or organic chem, starting in sophomore year. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I don't want to spend 8 more years, or 8 years in college, medical school, and then go
Mhm.
through all that stuff to become a doctor. It just wasn't going to be my calling. Um, and then I started. My dad had said, the best thing you could do, get an accounting degree. I'm like, well, that's the last thing I want to do, is get an accounting degree. Like, that's going to be so boring. So I ended up going finance, though. But I still didn't know what I was going to do. Maybe I'd go to law
Mhm.
school, and
Mhm.
got out of college, went to work for my dad's company. Well, it's really,
Mhm.
my dad was a very small minority owner in the company, but I'd grown up in the company. I worked in the shipping department all through high school. So
Mhm.
so I went to work, and my starting salary, I'll even share this now, $23,000 a year in 1992. Look it up. That's not
Woo.
much. Not
Hmm.
much.
Yeah.
Um, but that was part of the deal. Like, okay, well, you're gonna do this, and um, there's no special treatment.
Hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, I ended up. I was working in a company they just acquired. Spent about a year and a half helping, trying to get the company on track and trying to get it going. And I was given an opportunity within the parent company to go to the UK. And
Oh.
basically, yeah, there's a small startup that they had. It was 2 years old when I got there, and my wife and I both went, and she also worked for the company. So we worked together, siloed. Thank God, because that would
Wow.
well. But yeah, so I spent
Would-
3 years over there, kind of running the plant. And we had a
Oh,
sister company in
wow.
Holland. And yeah, I was sort of thrown in the deep end, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed wearing
Did
multiple
you?
hats. Um,
Hmm.
and so when I came back to the US,
Hmm.
the company wanted to send me to Pennsylvania and work in one of their plants there as a plant manager. And I knew I was not going to stick around with this company. So I wanted to be back where I had network and connections, and that was the Minneapolis metro area. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I got back and I worked for the other company, for that company for about 2 more years, and left, worked for another company for 2 years, and then started a business with a friend of mine. And
Excellent.
yeah,
And so the years you were in UK, you had already been married.
yep, yep.
So
My
the
wife and I met at school, met at Notre Dame, and
oh.
we got married young. We got married at 23.
Hmm.
So yeah, 32 years
Wow.
married.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. How about that?
And so how was that experience in the UK? I mean, because not ha I just assume, not having been overseas, or maybe you were, I wouldn't have known. It would have been a difference. Was it, I mean, did you enjoy the change and the challenge and the different surroundings?
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. We were the company was in the town of Loughborough. So anybody who's watching this in the UK, yeah, we were in Loughborough. Company's not there anymore, but I lived in a small village north of there called Longwatton. And my wife and I, we didn't have kids, so every single weekend we were traveling. And so we went all over the UK. We spent most of our free time, though, once we found discovered the lakes, we spent it in the lakes, walking the Lake District. Still is one of my top three places on this planet.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So all during this whole process now, did politics play a part? Were your parents conservative? Were they not? Was it on your radar? How did that look?
It's funny you asked that question because in 1980 we had when I was in elementary school, Reagan was running against Carter, and we all made political signs. I think I was in fourth grade. And I remember the sign I made, which was "How does America spell relief? REAGAN." Um, so my dad was conservative. I think most kids kind of emulate their parents up to a certain age, but I've never ever been not conservative. And yeah, I mean,
And then was that something that wasn't a thing with the organizations you were with? Was it just not talked about? Was it because now it's just so in your face over the last however 10 years or whatever? Was it
nobody gave a
not so
shit.
much?
Nobody
Yeah.
gave a shit at all. It, politics was never a thing. Like it was, I remember having discussions around the water cooler about Bill Clinton and about Monica and about all that stuff. But there
Mhm.
was never like, it was never the divide, the bitter divide that it is right now.
Right.
We certainly didn't
Yeah.
have trannies and all that kind of stuff running around.
Right. Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. And so um you started your business with a partner, and so you said your folks died in 2003.
Yep.
Was it they just both died one right after the other, or how
No,
did that?
it was a car accident in December of
Oh,
'03, about a week before Christmas.
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was hard. It was really hard. I was 33. Um, and to get that phone call, oh God, yeah, that was really bad. Um, but life happens, and now I'm watching all of my friends. They're ushering their parents onto their last journey, and a lot of it's also really hard. The dementia
Right.
is bad, and the personal care
Right.
and all of that stuff. It's just really hard. So it's six of
It's
one,
a,
half dozen of another. And I remember at the time thinking, um, I kind of had this vision, like, so my dad in a wheelchair. They were both 63. Excuse me. They were both 63. Um, and I just didn't know my mom was his primary caregiver, and I had no, like, when I would think about, well, how is this ever going to look like, in 20 years? What are my parents going to be doing? And my mom, she got him in and out of bed every day, lifted him in and out of bed, took care of him, all of that. And how long could she have done that? So, in part of me, even at the time, and I even said this when I did the eulogy, I said, well, you know, on some level, there's a silver lining here, and that is that they both went out at the top of their game. That they didn't have, they didn't suffer.
Mhm.
They had no, other than my dad being in a wheelchair. They were both healthy. Um, it's sure, would I have liked more time? Yeah, number of
Right.
times I've thought about just one more day would be awesome, would have been great, but yeah, that's not what happened.
And it's interesting that it said that uh, some of your friends, their parents are still alive and have Alzheimer's and things, and that's a slow deterioration. But what you had to deal with was a shock to your
Yeah.
system.
Yep.
And so how were you at handling that? I guess because you were also the big brother, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
How were you in that situation at that moment, having to deal with the repercussions of everything?
Yeah, it was hard. The first month was just numb.
Hmm.
One of my dad's friends, one of his closest friends ever, in fact, the reason I went to Notre Dame was because his lawyer and his good friend went to Notre Dame and was, but put the bug in my ear. I was set to go East Coast. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, Jack took care of my parents' estate, took care of all this stuff, and I was his boots on the ground. And he was a guy that I could bounce feelings off of. There were also, I had two other father figures in my life that helped me handle it. But there was no way but to go forward and to go through it. And it
Mhm.
sucked. It really sucked. I mean, it was like I had to take care of their house. I had to take care of all their stuff.
Mhm.
Donated almost everything because it was just easier. We didn't want to have a garage sale or anything like that. It was just
Mhm.
let other people benefit from this stuff. But yeah, it was really hard. And emotionally, that really, like, there's that regret of like, gosh, what if I just had one more day and I could have said the things I wanted to say and let both of them know, yeah, maybe I said some stuff when I was younger and it was really stupid and I totally regret it. Um,
Mhm.
I feel like, all that stuff happens with every human relationship. And there are
Right.
unspoken things. Um, I don't know. I guess I just look at it and think, well, I wish I would have had that time, but I didn't. Got to move on. So,
Yeah.
so there was always this there was always a task list for me of my own creation of stuff that I had to get done, things that I needed to do. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time wallowing.
Mhm.
I would say that in the evenings, early on, after within 6 months or whatever, I was thinking about it all the time. It
Mhm.
wasn't pleasant, but at some point,
Mhm.
the pain kind of goes away. The void is still there, but then you start to fill the void with the happier memories or the lessons that maybe you learned. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah.
A- and you noted back a little bit when we were talking earlier that it, you know at the funeral or whatever, you were filled with stories about your dad. You
Yeah.
said that he mentored people and which hopefully gave you good memories to fill into your head as opposed to the negative, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have a lot of negative stuff. My relationship with my dad was really good. My relationship with my
Hmm.
mom was decent.
But just the tragedy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My mom and I were at loggerheads probably more often than not, mainly because she was a nurse. She's a caregiver. She wanted to smother me, and I've always just been super independent. Like, no, don't need it, don't want it. No, no, I'm not going to tell you my shit. No, I'm not going to tell you what's going on. This is for me to deal with. Stuff like that, when I was growing up.
Yeah. Well, I understood. And so after that happened, so you said you were 33,
Yep.
um, and you had your business by then? You were married by then?
Mhm.
Things were then, did they slowly start to
Well,
even out
what
a little bit
happened?
or calm?
So the business I had with a friend, we were manufacturing. We had a patent on what turned into a little kids product. We had it manufactured in China. Uh, we had it manufactured in China, and they were selling it at retail stores like PacSun and Hot Topic. It was just one product, right, with multiple designs. Problem is that heading into that holiday season, we had good sales, but all the buyers were coming back saying, "Okay, cool. What do you have for next year?" And we're like, "What, next year we get new designs?" And they're like, "No, this is a one-time product." And we were like, "Well, shit, we didn't think about that."
Yeah.
Like, and so we sold the IP that we had, and we let business more or less wind down. Um, I couldn't have done anything anyway for 6 months. I had to take care of my parents' stuff. So we had one
Mhm.
good holiday season, and then the business went away. Um, I did okay with money wise in terms of the little product that we had in the IP, and
Mhm.
I knew that I wanted to get back into the business world, but I didn't
Mhm.
want to do another startup. I didn't have to do another startup, and so I spent 3.5 years looking to buy a business. I looked
Mhm.
at 248 companies. Um, of the 248, most of those you just get a teaser sheet and you're like, no, I'm not interested in this. I'm not interested
Mhm.
in that. Um, but I ended up finding this company in April, actually in late '07. Went through due diligence and closed in April of '08, right before the big crash.
Oh,
Oh yeah, yeah. Had a nice big loan on the purchase, and yeah, it was fine. We did fine.
so it wasn't smooth sailing, but you got through it.
Yeah, the thing is, the business was fundamentally sound when I bought it,
Hmm.
and I had really good people,
Hmm.
and I kept all of those really good people except the couple that we asked to leave and get off
Yeah.
the bus.
Yeah.
Um,
And I remember you telling stories about, when that you said there were a couple people, because I listened to your stories were so interesting on other shows that somebody you either interviewed or hired or you couldn't even, they were just so not there. You don't even wonder how they went through
how
life.
they got to work and got home every day? Yeah,
Yeah.
might have been the single, and I just say this with all like no anger or malice, but it might have been the dumbest person I've ever met, and and I hired her. So what does that make me, right? Um, she presented really well. She interviewed really well. Um, just couldn't make it stick.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Yeah, until you really get them there, you really don't know for sure, for sure.
Yeah, right.
Um, so so during this journey, when did you start to really question the bigger things in a way that you just really started digging into things?
9/11. I wouldn't say that I fully woke up. It was like, this doesn't make any sense. But, at the time, 2 years later, I lose my parents. I'm taking care of that stuff, looking for a business, find a business. start
Right.
to run a business, deal with the slow recession and all this stuff, hate Obama, all of that stuff, voted for McCain, but who else were you
Mhm.
going to vote for? Um,
Yeah.
and stuff just started like really seeming off. Um,
Hmm.
I found Q through a friend of mine, a guy that I went to college with. Um, he started talking to me about Q, and I'm like, you know what, this really makes sense to me. Like, and so I got on the Q boards, I got on the chans. I'm like, whoa, this these are my people. I found my
Oh,
people, my tribe. So
wow. And
yeah.
so, what did that lead? How did that lead you? I mean, did it lead? Because I know that in Q, a lot of it is open and ended questions. I mean, did it lead you to dive into all these different things, or how did it affect you?
Yeah, it affected me. Well, so keep in mind that my daughter was born in '05. My son was born in '09. Um, I've got a business to run. I've got my family and all of that stuff. But I was spending
Right.
a lot of time in the evenings and late evenings, early mornings on the cue boards.
Hmm.
Excuse me. And yeah, it was I don't know if I'd call it an obsession. Obsession's the wrong word. I just was really driven, and my curiosity was so strong that yeah, I was digging on the drops. We were looking at, you know, I, you could go from looking up the meaning of some particular government document to trying to figure out where the picture was that Q posted,
Hmm.
and trying to figure that stuff out. Um, I, it, for other people that dig and are drawn to these rabbit holes, you know what I'm talking about. It's hard to really describe it. It's just like, you know what, I'm gonna
Right.
pull this. I got to pull this thread. I got to pull this
Yeah.
thread and see where it goes. And
Also,
so
but didn't you also realize, because it was mystifying to me, it was so interesting to me, all of it, all the, not just Q, but all the things I was finding out we were lied to about. And so
mm,
I'd present it to other people. They'd be like, they didn't want to know, and so even though, did that happen to you? Did you just realize other people just aren't as into it as you are when you talked about it?
all of the above, yeah. I had friends that I didn't talk about it with everybody. I know some people talk about red pilling everybody, and I've never seen that work. I tried
Hmm.
with a couple of
Hmm.
close friends, and it just doesn't work unless somebody is willing to open their mind and take that step.
Right,
No amount of my telling them is going to get them to believe it. Now, if they
right,
want to come and ask me questions, I've had that in the last year. A couple people have asked me, but even then, though, they just don't want to know anymore. Like,
right.
man, how did you know about the vaccine? Like, I can tell a quick story about that. So,
Yes.
wife and I have a there are 5 other couples that one or both spouses went to Notre Dame in our class. And we would get together maybe once, twice a year, something like that, and have a happy hour or whatever. Well, when COVID hit, we started doing these Zooms every Friday night or every Saturday. I don't remember. But, we just shoot the shit and have fun. And then the vaccines start to come out. And two of them are like, hey, we've got our vaccine appointments. We're all excited about
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
And I just remember, I'm not going to say anything. I don't need to push. I
Right.
think of that Christopher Walken quote. I don't need you to push your politics on me. I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to even go there. Except one of my friends is like, hey, John, you going to get the vaccine? And I'm like, no. Everybody's like, what? Why wouldn't you do that? And I walked through the litany of stuff, and I had research, and I had all this stuff, and I was talking about antibody dependent enhancement, and I'm talking about a leaky vaccine in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm talking about mRNA has never been done, and it's only been 9 months, and blah blah blah. And these people all looked at me like I had an arm growing out of my head, and
Yeah.
that was the last Zoom that we did as a group.
Oh,
Yeah,
are you
that's fine.
kidding?
No, no, but you know what? I didn't need those people on my team. That's really what that clarified that for me. They're all good people. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
They're all really good people.
Right.
But if
Yes.
you're going to condemn me for throwing this research at you and saying I'm not going to
Yeah.
do this, well then
Right.
F you.
Have any of them come back around at all yet?
Not really. I mean, I've talked to, we've seen them at our kids' graduation parties and stuff like that, and it's all just surface level,
Hmm.
meaningless chitter chat, and
Right.
that's it. So, and that's fine. The friends I've made in this movement are the most important people, most important friends that I have, and I'm talking like Scott. Scott's so many people on Scott's call, Paul for sure, Joe Rambo, Dave News Treason. And by the way, when you called me to do this interview and you mentioned all those people, I'm not sure I deserve to be in the same breath. I'm flattered as hell, but
Oh,
those guys are amazing.
yeah. No, but the thing is, all of you have a different lane. And so that's why, and they do this amazing research and decoding and things, but what you have done, you and Paul, is this different lane that's so fascinating. And so it's equally as intriguing and important, um, for sure. And so that's why I just just felt it was really important
Hmm.
because something and like something in your brain, in your mind, you were able to, with Paul, were able to shift into this high gear. And so I'm curious that before you and Paul became friends, and you said that you went to Threadfest and things like that.
Hmm.
um so you were down those roads and believing certain things, but you were you just of the surface level of the lot of things we were lied about, or what made you start really digging in? Was it your friendship with Paul?
Well, I would say it was probably before that, but looking at just a lot of the Q stuff, and a lot of other media things that are out there. Yeah, maybe you could say that probably really started when Paul called me and said, "Hey, have you ever seen that video called I Pet Goat 2?" I'm like, "Yeah, that is really effed up." That there's he goes, "Yeah, it's really weird. You know, it came out in 2012." And I'm like, "Huh." We went and looked up this, we're doing this separately, but I'm looking up the studio name, Heliofont, which is like infant or child of the sun. That's the name of the company. And you start looking at the imagery in there and you go, man, there are comms all over this thing. And as part of the Q stuff, you start looking at things differently and you start seeing
Yeah.
symbolism or comms or whatever you want to call it. And we both were like, before we even talked about it, we're both like, there's something to this video, something a lot deeper.
Right.
And so then that was our first collaboration. And what's crazy is that, like, when we started, like, here's an example in the iPet Goat 2, there's a character that's dancing around like it's like a blue figure, right? And about halfway through or midway through the thing, the figure puts on a battle mask, except it's a mask of an Indian goddess called Shiva. Is it Shiva? And now I've forgotten more than I remember. But this Hindu guy, and I said, "That's a Hindu mask." And Paul's like, "Yeah, that's got to mean something." And so then, we're looking at stuff even deeper than like just going, "Well, yeah, that's really weird." Well, okay, there's a reason why they put a Hindu mask on that guy. Um,
Right.
there's a reason why there's a stag leaping in the wallpaper in that classroom with gold flecking off of its antlers. Um, I'm trying to remember little bits and pieces of it, um, but the thing is, we both went at a lot of this research like independently, and I would text him and go, "Hey man, did you see this? Did you notice this? Did you notice that?" And or if you ever read this book, Pilgrim's Progress? He's like, "Yeah, I read that book." I mean, just we had this really similar, but um, slightly different approach to things, but we'd read a lot of the same like classics and source books and all this stuff. And then as we started digging back into I know I'm jumping around, but we started digging into Percival and going further back. Like history's my thing. It's always been my thing. And I start mentioning all these guys, and Paul's like, "Wait a minute, I remember a book by that guy," and I'm like, "Oh, I hadn't heard of that." And so the way that we ended up working was that it was kind of like, had we done this stuff separately
Mhm.
without a sounding board, I don't know
Mhm.
that we'd be where we're at right now. I don't know that we'd see the things
Mhm.
that we see right now. And again, we could be wrong. But yeah, it's
He
really
said the
hard to
same
describe.
exact he said the same exact thing, by the way,
Oh, really?
when I spoke to him. And that can't be random though, John, right?
I don't
You
think
know?
so. I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know what what brought our brains together, but yeah, it's been it's been a lot of fun because we've both gone back to reread stuff that we've read in the past. We both have read so Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a 5 book, actually it's 7 books. Um, I read like the first one when I was in high school. I was a bookish kid. Um, I read that and I remembered it. I just didn't remember a whole lot about it. Well,
Mhm.
then I went back and reread that one and all of the others, and I'm like, whoa, there's so much symbolism in this. um, so it's stuff like that where we just, like our brains tend to think alike,
Yeah.
in the sense that when we're like looking some news, something will show up on a Twitter feed, and I'll say to Paul, I go, check out the name and this guy. Like there was a guy, headline 2 days ago, New York Post, I think it was, this $167 million Powerball winner. He had just won the Powerball like 2 weeks ago. Ends up getting arrested for fighting a cop in some Florida hotel, St. Petersburg, I think. His last name is Farthing, Farthing, Farthing. And I said to Paul, I'm like, you know, a farthing. A farthing was a quarter of a penny in the old British system. And like this guy's worth a
Oh.
lot more than 167 million farthings now. He's worth like 400 times that. We started talking about that. And his girlfriend's name, Jacqueline Fightmaster. Come on, this is a script. Did that really happen? Her last name is Fightmaster. I've never met a Fightmaster in my life.
That's so funny because I just remember this the other day. I was driving in Virginia and there was a sheriff running for office, and his name was Vote for Sheriff Heartless. And I was like, and now I think of stuff like that. Before I listen to you guys, I didn't really think about stuff like that. But I'm like, oh, it just makes you
Yeah.
just think differently. I think you two, even though I said this to Paul, and he's like, we tell it to other people. I think even though you've told these series and dissected different things on other shows, which I've seen, you guys should just do it on one, again, like this thing that I'm doing, this time capsule in one area. I'd be enthralled if you guys just did your own dissecting of things on one channel, because I just think it's fascinating, and it opens up people's minds that are watching you both, and we
Yeah, those
appreciate it so
those
much.
that
So
don't think we're nuts.
yeah, because I
Yeah,
think there's going to be less and less people that think you're nuts as time goes on.
we'll see.
And so I like to have this as my last question. And I know you've found this too. If I've seen it, I know you've seen it. Um, where the people who are seeing what's happening and then also wanting to share what's happening have had either a sudden increase in their spirituality or has had a gradual, and it's kind of shifted them in the way they see everything. And so is that something in your life that has been a slow progress? Have you seen it accelerate at a certain time? Or tell me about that.
That's a good question. I don't know that I've necessarily seen that in my life. I've the acceleration happened when Paul and I started talking. um,
Oh,
I yeah, I don't really have an answer for you on that. I don't necessarily. I'm not looking at stuff through a spiritual lens. I'm looking at it through,
mhm.
and we get criticized for that all the time. People are like, "Oh, you
Right,
sons of Lucifer." Da, da, da. No, no, we're just looking at stuff. We're trying to find, you know, things that are factual at least, without any
right,
emotion around it.
right. But but what's interesting though is it doesn't negate the spiritual. It's wrapped in spirituality because the whole movement is,
Right.
as you
Right.
can tell by the fellows that you're hanging out with,
Yeah.
who become your best friends
Yes.
basically. And so but you have to take that hat off in order to be able to do what you're doing.
Yes.
But I think that the whole story of you and everything you've been through, from being adopted, and your whole life, and then your parents' sudden exit and everything takes you. I mean, it's all divine, and when you start to reflect back at it in the timing of things, um, to take you to where you are so that you can have this analytical journey with Paul that is part of this bigger picture. Don't you think?
Yeah, I would say what is interesting is that when I was looking for a business, I was really close on a company. 11 days from close. It spent a lot of money on due diligence, attorneys, and all that kind of stuff, and accountants. And the owner backed out. And on a smaller deal, you don't have penalty clauses. He just takes his ball and goes home, and you're left with bills. Um, I had a couple of deals like that, and then when I found this company, everything happened. And not only did everything happened with a team already in place. A family had owned this business before, and they had, a COO and a VP of sales, and the family really didn't spend a whole lot of time managing the business. So I was able to slide into a role where I could do the fun strategic stuff that I love to do and not have to think about and worry about day to day because I already had a team to do that stuff. Secondly, this my company, a big chunk of our um, revenue, a significant chunk of our revenue comes from government, like highway construction. So it's all guaranteed, by the Miller Act and by bonds and all that kind of stuff. I've had a total of I've had $7,700 in bad debt over over 17 years. $7,700. That's it. One customer, because we didn't know, we were too stupid early on to learn about the process of placing liens and are actually filing preliminary notices on bonds and stuff like that. So it hasn't happened since. But what I'm saying is that I got into a business where we don't have a cash flow problem. I get into a
Mhm.
business where a chunk of it is highway funds. They're kind of always going to be there, and especially in a recession, how do they pump up
Mhm.
the economy? They spend money federally.
Mhm.
Now it's to an amazing degree, and not we're not seeing that much by the way in the highway
Mhm.
stuff, given that it was all for trannies and Pakistani homos.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's
Just
okay.
the waste is unreal. What is interesting though is that talking about sort of this divine or whatever you want to call it, I ended up with this company. I ended up with a great team. When I went to, I had to let my controller go, the one who came with the company. Um, Heart was in the right place, just not a very positive person. Didn't really want to be around him all that much. I found this person the day that I made that decision. I got a phone call from somebody. I made the decision to let the guy go. I got a phone call from the business broker who was on the sell side of this transaction. And he said, "Hey, if you're ever looking for anybody as a controller," I'm like, "You got to be kidding me." And he goes, "Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I have to tell you, she doesn't have a college degree. I'm like, I don't care. He told me that she was like one of the top five controllers that he'd ever worked with in his career. And I just said, that's all I need to know. And I went and met with
Mhm.
her. We were just going to meet and have coffee and just talk about what she's looking for and what my role would be. And by the end of an hour, I'm saying, well, okay, well, where do you need to be at? And and then I go, well, wait a minute, am I making you an offer? Yeah, I'm making you an offer. She goes, oh, don't you want to think about it? And I go, no. And she has been my right hand for 14 years now.
Oh, wow.
Um, couldn't have, just like with all of my other employees, it couldn't do without her. So,
Mhm.
but I hired that person, and she just kind of dropped in my lap. And then we expanded to Texas, a different kind of facility. One of my competitors had let two of their guys go who understood how to do this other product line, and I just
Mhm.
went down to meet with them because I'm like, I don't see getting into that product line. I don't see how it works. I went down and met with them, and they're like, yeah, here's what you need. Here's the pro forma. Here's how we. I'm like, oh wow, okay, let's go. And now that business is bigger than the original one that I bought.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like
Yes.
I've been all this stuff just kind of keeps falling in line for me, and I've been lucky. I've said this on multiple shows when I'm asked about it. I am one of the luckiest people on the planet. I mean,
Well, and
yeah,
you appreciate it, and because of that, I mean, obviously that's how I feel. It's just way more than luck, and and you just start to see this the our reach our lives are like a play, and your play, you couldn't make it up, the stuff that has happened that has led you.
yeah,
And who would have thought, I think, that you would be here now, we would be talking, I'd be doing this podcast, you'd be digging down earth-shattering theories, and before, I mean, we just don't can't predict this stuff,
no,
what's going to be happening, but someone's predict knows what's going to be happening, so it's just really it's just a it's such a fun journey every single day, and I could tell, not even knowing you, that you're just a good person and you do really good things for people without any, you know, fanfare or anything like that. And you're genuinely enjoying diving into this information too.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. Yeah, I've helped people, but I don't really talk about it because it doesn't need to be
Right.
talked about, and I'm not in this for any sort of glory or accolades or
Right.
anything else. I mean, follow me or don't follow me on Twitter. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't. I haven't posted a ton of late. We've been really busy, but um,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm just me.
Yeah. Yes. But what you are, you're just a kind person. And I, and
You
I
should,
really
you should
appreciate.
see me when I drive. I'm probably not very kind if you could hear what I say.
Well, we all got we got some of that. Well, of that, but genuinely, you're a really good person, and I'm always looking forward to hearing the other things that you and Paul come up with. I think you're pretty regularly every other week
Yeah.
on Rambo and Friends.
Yep.
Um, so I love looking forward to that. It's just super cool. And I just really appreciate you taking the time and doing this for an hour, and just so that we could hear your awesome story, and because it's going to be studied for a long time. I know you don't think it might be,
Yeah.
but it's going to be. I know it is for sure.
Well, I should be so lucky, right? I mean, um, our the Joe Rambo show. Joe, by the way, is such a great guy. He's a great host, and I mean, those shows are a blast. You mentioned earlier about Paul and I doing a show. I don't think we'd ever really do that. I mean, I've got so much going on anyway
I know.
and I know it takes a lot to put these shows together. So kudos to you
Yes.
for doing this. But again, I'm flattered. I'm even in the same breath with those guys.
Yes, but even if you just think about it, I don't want to talk you into it, but even if you analyze like one video, like the goat one, even just one, they don't have to be that long. It's just think about it. But Regardless, thank you so much for doing this and for taking the time. And I will continue to enjoy seeing you on different other podcasts and seeing the latest things that you all have discovered. And I really do enjoy it, and I enjoy you very much. And thank you for taking the time to talk with me, John. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
well, thanks for having me. Really, like I said, I'm I'm just kind of floating around here like a feather in life. Sometimes it feels like Forrest Gump style. Um,
Yeah. Well, I mean, people do enjoy you and Paul and enjoy the things you're coming up with. And so and you're both very sincere, and it comes across too. So it's very endearing. So thank you. I'll look forward to seeing you again on those shows, okay?
awesome. Thanks, Ellen.
Okay. Take
See ya.
care.